Greetings and welcome to another model building workshop. I am Mr. Allen. I'm coming to you from my basement workshop here in Providence, Rhode Island, on behalf of the Community Libraries of Providence. And we're going to be talking about this old kit. This is the Heller 1/72nd scale Hawker Hurricane Mark II-C. This kit's been around a while, probably the 70s, if not earlier, but this boxing looks like it's goes back a ways. Some of the other kits in that line, which I'd built all of those at one point. I built them in the 80s. A couple more here. I don't know if they ever did the Zero, if I ever did that one from Heller. Ironically, I built many things. So this is the Hawker Hurricane II-C. And it gives you two different versions, two decorations, as it says. And we'll look into those in just a second. So I've got a couple here that I had built a while back. One which I'm not gonna show you in too much detail, because this is it here. But this is really old. Built this a long time ago, and it is, yeah, been left out for too long. I need some serious cleaning. I don't know if that's going to come out or not, because it's in pretty bad shape, really. The profile looks good, but the top of the wings, you can see the dirt and dust have kind of really gotten to this over the years. I mean, it's been sitting around for quite a while. The bottom looks good, because naturally that was the bottom. It's not getting, the dust. And if you don't have them in a case or behind glass somewhere, you really do need to dust these off frequently. And yeah, this one kind of got away from me over the years, I guess. So anyway, this version is in the kit with the tropical filter. And this one's out in Southeast Asia. I have a very different version here. Just the Heller kit. But I picked up aftermarket decals for Yugoslavia. So these date back a ways, because these are still hand painted. This is before I got into airbrushing. I thought that was an interesting color scheme with these fun Yugoslavian markings of the time period. I forgot what set of decals this was, and I don't even know if it's even around anymore. Although I'm sure someone's making something that would be kind of equivalent. So this Heller kit, kind of a standard Heller kit, lots of fun. It's got its pros and cons. I mean, for one, I guess the con would be if you wanted to read, you got to pick, all right, where's the English version? And you got to try to read the instructions on the back, but the illustrations on the front, unless you photocopied it and have two versions, it's kind of hard to kind of flip and flop back and forth. Although after you've built a few of these, you kind of get the idea how they go together anyway, and you can just look at the diagrams and figure it out by yourself. This is those kits that just had the big blow-up diagram, and that's it. Text on back, as I said. Yeah, so there's two versions here. One's the first fighter squadron of the forces, the Air Forces of India, or in India in 1944. That's the one that's here with the light blue, dark blue circles. That's out in India. And another version they've got here is an all-black night fighter from 1941-42 period. And I've done versions of night fighter, Hawker Hurricane night fighters, I think with the Mark 1 maybe I did, from a different manufacturer, in the all-black. Here's the decal sheet, which has seen better days, but not Not terrible. A bit yellowed. Some say if you put that in the sun for a while, it'll take the yellowing out. Haven't had much success with that myself, but I've heard that's an option. Although the ones for India don't look too bad there. The yellowing around the SW colors, the red ones here, look a little concerning. They look pretty much on register. I don't know if it's optical illusion. The one with the yellow, I'm not sure that is necessarily in register. But if you stare at it too long, you start going, ah! So, I don't know. I don't have a lot of faith in these decals staying on the model. They look like they're really thick. Although, these have stayed on for many, many, many years. So who knows? Maybe they would work. But I have a different plan for this kit anyway, so now let me explain what I want to do with it. So I have this set of decals that I got. Colorado decals. This is the Portuguese Air Force. Great emblem, huh? So I want to do this up as a Portuguese hurricane. Give you a diagram here. I'll show you a good illustration of this plane in a book in just a second. But you get the idea. Those large crosses on the wings. I'll give you a bit of a background on this. I know I talked about the Portuguese Air Force and World War II in a much earlier episode when we first started this channel. But this also came with decals for different Spitfires as well. And here's more of the Hurricane options. So let me show you what that looks like. Let me see if I can find this. In Flying Colors, which is a fun book if you just want to look up different painting options for a particular plane. This is really cool for that. Because in a case like this, I picked up, couldn't help it, I saw this on sale, really at a really low price. Sometimes you just can't let it sit there. Or I suppose I should learn how to let it sit there on the shelf as opposed to going, nope, that's too low a price. I'm going to snatch that. And sure enough, picked it up. And, began thinking, what could I do with that? All right, let me find this now. Of course, it's hard to find. Now that I want to. Just had it briefly. Here it is again. Okay. So here's a lot of different things you could do with a Hawker Hurricane. Look at all those different options you could do there. And if you look there, you'll see the Portuguese one is right in the middle. And that's what I'm looking at. Because I think that's going to be a fun one to do. I do think this Australian one in all green is kind of intriguing too. Anyway. Let's see if it says much about it here. Number 9. Hurricane, yeah, it says a 2B. Not a 2B, but there are 2 C's because I've got it on the sheet there. Oporto, 1948. That's what it says here of that one. I'm not going to do too much of a history on the Hurricane because I think a lot of us know the plane. It's probably the, lesser of the Battle of Britain. You had the Spitfire, which was kind of the really famous and flashy plane of that period, and then you get the Hawker Hurricane, which is actually the workhorse of the RAF during the Battle of Britain. Which there were more of the Hurricanes, and I think they took on the bombers, while the Spitfires tended to take on the fighters. Kind of generalizing, but, there was some, truth to that. Since the Spitfire was fewer numbers, but performed better and faster than the Hurricane, but the Hurricane was a rugged plane and did well overall, especially against the bombers. So there's some different versions there of it, including one from Finland with that swastika looking design, but it's not actually a swastika. It's just a version of the cross that had been used throughout through the Balkans for quite a while, and then Hitler kind of used the symbol and kind of turned it into what we know it as now. A few more things here on the Hurricane. What's interesting with the Hurricane, you can see that it's, a combination of metal and fabric. The back end of the plane is in fabric, and you'll see that fabric texture on the model pretty nicely. Yeah, bore the brunt of the early combat against the Luftwaffe over France and Britain. Most numerous of RAF's combat aircraft well into 1941. Yep. Anyhow. And here's another Portuguese plane over here, which we talked about this plane a long time ago when we first started this channel. This is a Curtiss Hawk. So it's a fun markings to put on a plane to give it a completely different look. Everybody, well, maybe not everybody, a lot of people know the Curtiss Hawk, but not looking like this. As you can see, it has the RAF paint scheme on it, but with interesting different emblems. So what happened was, I'll keep this short, but Portugal found itself in a kind of nerve-wracking situation where suddenly they were surrounded by Axis countries. You had Spain with Francisco Franco next door to them, pretty much surrounding them. He just won the Spanish Civil War. Fascist country next door. Not comfortable for the Portuguese to have that. And then France falls. Germany is swallowed up Europe. So the Portuguese are obviously quite nervous having this situation with everything around them being potentially hostile countries. So they begin to worry about their defense. And they had a lot of outdated aircraft at this time, and they're trying to find ways to get some new stuff so they have a better chance to defend themselves just in case. And one thing that really concerned them is they were afraid that their islands, like the Azores, might suddenly be a tempting target to the Germans for use as submarine bases. So they were kind of panicky in Portugal. So they began looking to find ways to modernize their squadrons, and they found a medieval treaty that they had with Britain that kind of blew the dust off this old document, and they kind of used that as leverage to convince the British to send them some more updated aircraft so they could defend themselves, and in a way to help protect areas like the Azores and that part of the Atlantic from submarines. So it's kind of a win-win for Britain in a way. Of course, the other thing that happened too is that Britain, feel bad about this one for the Portuguese, but hey, during wartime you get what you get. So the British sent them planes like this one, the Hawk. These were planes that were originally supposed to be going from the United States to France in 1940. France collapsed, so the rest of the shipment ended up going to Britain. The British tried these out, thought they were horrible. Same, I think, with the Airacobra. They hated that plane too. And they found a reasonable use. Like, oh, wait a minute. Why don't we sell these planes that we hate to Portugal? Make some money, make them happy. They've got more modern aircraft, and we're rid of these things. So win, 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 right? So that's what they were thinking, and that's how this kind of happened. And eventually they started to give them Spitfires and Hurricanes kind of later in the war. You know, as these planes are starting to phase out as newer models are coming in. And then by the end of the war and into the and afterwards, the United States ended up supplying Portugal and going from there. So here's the pieces on the Heller kit. Like I said, you could see the fabric details, kind of nice. It's an old mold, but I think it's pretty nice. I enjoyed building this plane. Obviously, I made a couple of them. And I am looking forward to doing this again. Here's the wings. I think the detail there is pretty good too, with the cannons on them. Here we see different types of air intakes. The propeller, landing gear doors, stuff of that sort is all here. Then we get some cockpit details in the bottom wing. Cockpit details are kind of slim, but you got something to work with. Of course, you don't see much of any of it through the glass anyhow. At least on the ones I've got, there's very little you're going to see in there anyway. It's your wheel wells, and then you got your clear plastic parts here with a tiny landing light. Those are usually the pieces that drive me insane. But here's your glass parts, and it's the front of the windshield and the back. I mean, you can have this. I guess you could try to open this if you wanted it opened. I don't have to show that on the instructions, but that might be an option. No, they don't show it here, but maybe. For painting options, they just have it all listed in French. So it kind of helps to either know what the colors are on these planes in advance, or learn French or get a French translation. Best thing really is to just look up RAF colors, and then you know, do best that way. So this particular plane came out probably 1942, I guess. Yeah, became the standard version after 1942. Yeah, so this is now wearing the gray and green camouflage as opposed to the earth and green of the Battle of Britain. And that's what we see here. And we see that on the Portuguese plane as well. Anyway, so that's the Hawker Hurricane by Heller. Love this beat up old box. It's kind of fun finding these things in like antique shops and so forth, sitting around. Back you get your little catalog of all the other Heller aircraft. I generally enjoy Heller planes. Kind of reminds me of Airfix in a way. I know it's probably sacrilege to you British model builders, but I kind of find it equivalent. I don't want to step on any toes, but I thought they were pretty good too. Anyway, that's today's episode. Keep on building, and we'll see you next time on the next model building workshop. And again, happy VE Day. All right, we'll see you. Bye.